the sponsorships over Yom Tiv, and today on Monday to Alan and Sumarowitz for dedicating the shir in commemoration of the yard site of families lost in the Holocaust. We hope that in the merit of our Talmud Torah and Neshamas happen Aliyah. On yesterday, which was Tuesday, was yesterday Tuesday? Yeah, okay. Yesterday was Tuesday. Moshe and Chavi Abramson for dedicating the daf in honor of the Yom Tiv of Sukkot. Yasher Koyach, thank you. And today to thank Tovia and the Orish Schlesinger for dedicating the sheer memory of Tovia's father, Mordechai ben Rabbi Shmuel. We hope that in the merit of our Talmud Torah and the Neshama as an Aliyah and the family in Nechama. And to also thank Bruce and Kathy Posner for dedicating the shir in honor of the yard site of Kathy's father, Michal ben Meir. We hope that in the merit of our Talmud Torah and the Neshama will have an Aliyah and the family in Nechama. All right, to both say with that, let's begin. Today's daf is Mem Zayin. We are picking our point at the top of the daf. Tan Rabbanon. So, a very beautiful Gemara ahead of us today. Tan Rabbanon. Kivsi Atzeres. So, we'll say, I don't have a Sukkis tie-in, but there is at least a Regalim tie-in. It's talking about Shavuos. So, okay, so Kivsi Atzeres. Kivsi Atzeres, remember, referred to the offerings, the animal offerings of Shavuos. So remember again, on Shavuos, as we've spoken about already, so you have two different parts of the karban. You have the animal part of the karban, plus you have the shtei halechem, the special offering of the two loaves. We have already spoken about the interdependence of these two parts of the karban. You cannot go ahead and partake of the kvasim without the lechem, and you cannot partake of the lechem without the kvasim. Ultimately, again, they are part and parcel of the same karbanic unit. So therefore, the Gemara says as follows: Tan Rabbanan, Kivsi Atzeres, ein mekadshin es halechem el b'shchita. Very interesting halacha. So when it comes to Kivsi Atzeres, the lechem itself, the bread of the shtei halechem, ultimately only becomes sanctified when the animal part of the sacrifice is shechted. So at the zman of the shchita is when the loaves themselves become consecrated. Ketzad. So for example, the Gemara says, now not Ketzad, we understand this concept is straightforward. The Gemara is about the application of the Ketzad. For example, shachtan l'shman, v'zarak daman l'shman, kidesh halechem. So on a very simple level, if you shechted the karban l'shma, and you did the zrika l'shma, then the bread becomes sanctified. Shachtan shalo lishman, but if you went ahead and you shechted the karban shalo lishman, or vizarak daman shalo lishman, or you did zrika shalo lishman, so the Gemara says lo kidesh halechem. Well, I should say differently. Shachtan shalo lishman, vizarak daman shalo lishman is one of this. Meaning, we shechted shalo lishman, did the zrika shalo lishman, then what's the halacha? Lo kidesh halechem. So we'll say, so the first two cases are the absolute cases. Case number one, shchita was done l'shma, zrika was done l'shma, and therefore what? The lechem, the shtei lechem, the bread part, the loaf part of the sacrifice is consecrated. Absolute case number two, both shchita and zrika done shelo l'shman. In that case, the lechem is not consecrated. Where does the interesting situation arise? So the Gemara says, shachtan l'shman, v'zarak daman shelo l'shman. We'll say, what about in the following case? Shchita was done l'shma, but zrika was not done l'shma. So what's the halacha? Halechem kadosh ve'ino kadosh. So we'll say, here comes the variation case. Let's say shchita was done l'shma, but zrika was not done l'shma. Right? So again, what does that mean? Zrika was not done l'shma kivsi atzeres, it was done l'shem something else. So therefore we'll say, what's the status of the lechem? What's the status of the bread in this case? So the Gemara says, Kadosh ve'ino Kadosh divrei Rebbe. Rebbe holds, it's sanctified, but it's not sanctified, which sounds like what? It's quasi-sanctified. It's quasi-sanctified. Divrei Rebbe. Now, Rashi already points out over here, Mefarish l'kaman. We're going to see later on what exactly this means. Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon Omer, the Olam eino Kadosh, ad sheyishchot lishman, v'yizrok daman lishman. Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon says, no. The halach is, Rabbi say, that the bread, the lechem, does not become sanctified until both the shchita and the zrika is done l'shman. And therefore, if either one of those two parts are done shalo l'shman, then what's the halacha? The bread does not become sanctified. So we'll say now, some fundamental machlokes in Rabbi and Rabbi Elazar and Shimon. So we'll say again, remember, in a very specific case, shchita was done l'shma, zrika was done shelo lishma. What's this impact of the bread? What's the impact on the shtei halechem, on the loaf part of the offering? Rebbe says kadosh ve'eno kadosh, which we don't even know what that means yet. And Rabbi Shimon says it's not kadosh. The only time the bread becomes sanctified is ultimately again when shchita and zrika was done shel Shabbos. So you understand why the nafkamina in this? Nafkamina is very significant. What's the nafkamina? Can you go ahead and use those 2 loaves for something else? Right? So remember, according to Rabbi, well, let's go different. According to Rabbi Shimon and Rabbi Shimon, the answer is yes, because as long as both shchita and zrika were not done l'shman, then what? Then Allah so the loaves are not consecrated. If they're not consecrated, use them for anything you want. According to Rebbe, we're not sure because we don't know what the definition of kadosh ve'ino kadosh is. So let's analyze this. Says the Gemara, my time with the Rebbe. What's Rebbe's logic? Why is it that Rebbe holds? So Rebbe say one thing is clear, which is kadosh ve'ino kadosh means what Rebbe say that if you did shchita lishma and zrika shalo lishma, it's somewhat effective for the lechem. The shaila is, so before we get to what level of effectiveness that is actually created, what does it mean? What's Rebbe's logic? My time with the Rebbe. Dichsev, here we go. The pasuk says, "Ve'es ha'ayil ya'aseh zevach shlamim la'Hashem al sala matzos v'asa koines minchaso ve'es nisko." So the pasuk says, "Ve'es ha'ayil ya'aseh zevach shlamim la'Hashem al sala matzos lememra the shchita mekadsha." So we'll say Rebbe's logic ultimately is the es ha'ayil ya'aseh zevach. What does it mean ya'aseh zevach? I will say, what does zevach mean? Zevach means something that is slaughtered, something that is offered up. Therefore, what does Rebbe say? Once shchita was done lishma, even if zrika was not, that has the ability ultimately to transform the carbon into a proper carbon, and therefore has the ability to convey some level of kedusha upon the bread. Again, we still don't know in Rebbe's model what kadosh ve'eno kadosh means. I don't understand what that concept means, but what I do understand is that shchita lishma is enough to somehow positively impact the bread. Rabbi Shimon ya'aseh. Rabbi Shimon, he focuses on the word ya'aseh. What does ya'aseh mean? Ad sheya'aseh kol asiyosa. So this is really amazing. Rabbi Shimon says, we'll say the pasuk says, ve'es ha'ayil ya'aseh. What does ya'aseh mean? Ya'aseh means the ayil only becomes fully impactful, or I should say, the ayil is only vested with this full measure of kedusha, and therefore by extension, the shtei alechem only becomes kadosh when ya'aseh. What does ya'aseh mean? Ya'aseh refers to all parts of the carbonic process. What are all parts of the carbonic process? Shchita and zrika. So we'll say, so therefore the fundamental machlokes Rebbe and Rabbi Shimon is, Rabbi Shimon focuses on the word ya'aseh. Here in the sense, asiyah refers to the totality of the carbonic process. The totality of the carbonic process encompasses both shchita and zrika. The lechem only becomes kadosh if both shchita and zrika are done lishma. Rebbe, on the other hand, holds, he focuses on v'as ha'el ya'aseh zevach. As soon as the carbon becomes a zevach, then what? The carbon is effective, and by extension, the shtei halechem is vested with kedusha. At what point does the carbon become a zevach? At the time of shchita. At the time of shchita, that's the fundamental machlokes. It might be a gilgul. That fly could be that it's just here to learn daf mem zayin menachos. You know, I don't know. You have a different. Yeah, I don't know. I'm just saying it's or the world likes coffee, or it likes coffee. But okay, so the Gemara says as follows. So we'll say, so here we go. So the Gemara asks each the Rebbe nami haksiv yasa. So we'll say, what does Rebbe do with the yasa? Right? What does he do with that phrase? So we'll remember again, Rebbe is focusing on zevach. Rabbi Shimon is focusing on yasa. Obviously, each of them have to darshan the other part of the pasuk. So, Rebbe nami haksiv yaseh. What does Rebbe do with the word yaseh? So, watch this. Ikisiv zevach yaseh kid ka'amrit. So, if it would have said zevach yaseh, then Rebbe says, Rabbi Shimon, I would agree with you. Hashta dichsiv yaseh zevach. But now that the phrase reads, he shall make it a zevach, bameh yaseh. How is the carbon made, so to speak? In other words, what creates the effectiveness of the carbon? Bezvicha. So I'll say, so Rebbe's not discounting the ya'aseh. I agree with you. But Rebbe says you have to read it as a phrase. You can't just read ya'aseh by itself. Right? It says ya'aseh zevach. what affects the asiya of the carbon, what concretizes the carbonic identity? It's what? Zevach. It's the shchita. Therefore, Abosa, because it's the shchita that concretizes the carbonic identity, it is the shchita that ultimately creates the chalos shem kedusha on the shtei halechem as well. For Rabbi Shimon haksiv zevach, I love Rabbi Shimon. It says zevach. What do you do with the phrase, with the word zevach? Rabbi Elazar B'Shimon will use the word zevach to teach you the halacha of Rabbi Yochanan. What does Rabbi Yochanan say? Rabbi Yochanan, Hakol modim shetzarech sheyehei lechem b'shas shchita. Everyone agrees about saying that the shtei halechem must be in existence and must be present at the time of the shchita. So I'll say, interestingly enough, see understands over here that Zevach ultimately teaches that in order for the Shtei Halechem to be vested with Karbonic Kedusha, they must be in existence at the time of the Shechit. In other words, Rabbi say, you can't go ahead and what? You can't go ahead and make the Shtei Halechem after the carbon was shechted. But rather, again, they must be in existence at the time of the Shechita itself. If you look at Rashi, Rashi says over here, Akol Modim, Afilu l'Rabbi Eliezer, do Amar Zrika Iker, Modi ditzar sheyehei lechem b'shas shchita, v'ilo hava b'shas shchita lo mekach shelei zrika. So I'll say, even though Rabbi Shimon holds that zrika is the ikar, he holds or he agrees that halacha l'maisa, the bread itself must be in existence at the time of the shchita. Okay, so I'll say now we go back. So that's the machlokes, Rebbe and Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon. Now also let's take a step back. Remember again, so Rebbe held that if you have a situation where you did shchita lishma, Zrika shelo lishma. So what's the impact on the lechem? Kadosh ve'ino kadosh. So now says, what does that mean? My kadosh ve'ino kadosh. What does that phrase mean? Kadosh ve'ino kadosh. Abayi Amar kadosh ve'ino gomer. So Abayi says it means that it's kadosh, but it's not complete. It's not complete. Say so again. Rashi says mafarish to come on. What does that mean? Like, shkayach. I understand that kadosh ve'ino kadosh means it's kadosh, but it's not completely kadosh. What's my problem? I don't know what that means. What does it mean that it's not completely kadosh? So the Gemara says, Rava Amar. Rava says what it means is as follows: kadosh ve'eno niter. Rava says what it means is it's sanctified, but it is not permitted for kohanic consumption. So kadosh ve'eno kadosh, Rava says means it has sanctity, but it bless you, but it cannot be eaten to the kohen. Rashi says ve'eno niter lo kohanim. So we'll say, now watch this. My benayu. So what's an afkamino? What's an afkamino over here between Abaye and Rava? So we'll say, Ika benayu lemitvas pidyono. Both this is actually very interesting. Do you have the ability to redeem this shtei halechem onto money? So we'll say, in other words, there are certain things where sanctity can be transferred onto money. Therefore, the money becomes sanctified. But ultimately, again, then the item becomes deconsecrated. So the shaila over here is in this kind of situation, can you deconsecrate the shtei halechem onto money? So watch this. La Abaye lo tafis pidyono. It was according to Abaye, ultimately, again, if you try to redeem these loaves by transferring their sanctity onto money, the transfer would not work. L'Rava, I'm sorry. Abaye lo tafis pidyono. The Rava tafis pidyon. According to Rava, ultimately you could have also take a look at Rashi for just a moment. La Abaye lo tafis pidyono b'kedusha shtei halechem ve'imratza mishana hamaos l'shar karbanos sibor. So we'll say according to Abaye, so the transfer doesn't take. Therefore, if you could use those monies for anything you want. According to Rava, however, damar kadosh gomer tofis pidyon. So we'll say according to Abaye, who says that in this type of situation where the shechita was done l'shma, the zrika was done shalol l'shma. So Abaye says that what? So we'll say Rebbe says it's kadosh ve'eno kadosh, and Abaye says kadosh ve'eno kadosh means it's kadosh ve'eno nikmar. It's not fully vested with kedusha. Because it's not fully vested with kedusha, therefore what? You can't deconsecrate it onto funds. Therefore, if you did deconsecrate it onto funds, you could still use those funds for whatever you want because the deconsecration process did not work. According to Rava, who understands that Rebbe's kadosh ve'eno kadosh means what? It's fully kadosh. Just what? It cannot be eaten by kohanim, right? It's just not niter la'achila. Therefore, if you deconsecrate it onto funds, the deconsecration ultimately would work, and therefore you cannot use those funds for something else. So the Gemara says, Bishlam al Rava, Hainu di'ika bein Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon. So according to Rabbi, understand what the nafkamina ultimately is between Rabbi and Rabbi Rabbi Shimon. Elala Abaye ma'ika bein Rabbi 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 Shimon. Rabbi according to Abaye's version of meaning according to Abaye's understanding of Rabbi. So what is the machlokas between Rabbi? Between what is the machlokas between Rabbi and Rabbi Shimon? Ikebeinahu le'efsule biyotze. To which he will say the nafkamina would be ultimately again in this situation of shtei halechem, which was consecrated by a carbon that was shechted l'shma, but the zrika was done shelo l'shma. Does it become puzzle with the yotze? In other words, if you take it outside of the Beis Hamikdash, what's the impact on that? Look at Rashi for just a moment. It's almost right across in Rashi. Liv sule biyotze. Rashi says the Rebbe da'amar kadosh ktsas b'shchita. So it's according to Rebbe who says that when you do the shchita l'shma and the zrika shelo l'shma, the carbon is vested with some level of kedusha. Im yatsa nifsal. If you take the loaves outside of the Beis Hamikdash, then what? It will be puzzle because of yotze. Shafilu zarko shelo l'shma nami aser b'achila. The Rabbi shchita lo mekadsha ein nifsal b'yotze. Well, it's according to Rabbi Shimon who holds that ultimately shchita by itself is not enough, but you need a zrika l'shma as well. Then if you take any part of this carbon outside of the Beis Hamikdash, it will not become puzzle by yotze. Good. We'll say next topic. So we'll say, so now that we finish off with the fundamental machlokas, ultimately again, between Rebbe and Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Shimon, so we transition now to the next topic. So Rabbi Shmuel bar Rabbi Yitzchak bar Rabbi bar Abba, Kif Seatzeres Sheshachton Lishman Vizarak Daman Shalo Lishman. So we'll say, here we go. Kif Seatzeres. So same situation still, the offerings of Shavuos, which was shechted lishma, but the zrika was done shelo lishman. Osa halechem mahu ba'achila. I will say ultimately again that shtei halechem, are you permitted to consume it or not? So ali b'deman, to which the Gemara asks, well, whose opinion are you asking in? I ali b'der Shimon. Say if you want to say it's Kotra Shimon ha'amar zrika he demekatsha. So Kotra Shimon will say that's an easy one. Why? Because Rabbi Shimon is of the opinion that it is the zrika lishma that consecrates the loaves. Consequently, if the zrika was done shelo lishman, then what? Then the loaves are not consecrated. Iyaliba de Rebbe. And if you want to say, the question is according to Rebbe, bein la abai bein la rava, kadosh ve'ino niter. We'll say both according. Remember, we had two interpretations of Rebbe. Abai and Rava and Machlokes, what it means kadosh ve'ino kadosh. But according to both of those opinions, we'll say the halacha is the loaves enjoy some level of sanctity, but one thing is clear, which is it cannot be consumed by Kohanim. Ella aliba dahaitana. But rather, again, the question must be according to the following Tana. The Tani Avua de Rabbi Yirmiyah bar Abba. Because we had the following situation. The father of Yirmiyah bar Abba said as follows: Shtei halechem sheyatzu bein shchit l'zikabos. So this is actually a really very interesting case. So you have the two loaves of Shavuos. And what happens? They was taken outside of the Beis Hamikdash. So you have the two loaves that were taken out between shchita and zrika. So he did the shchita of the kvasim, of the kif seatzeres. The zrika didn't yet take place. You take the shtei halechem outside of the Beis Hamikdash. Vizarak daman shel kvasim chutz lizmanon. They both say there's a lot of stuff going on over here. So I shecht the karbanos, fine. After the shchita, I went ahead and I took the shtei halechem outside of the Beis Hamikdash. After that, I did zrika of the shnei kavasim of the two offerings for Shavuos, but I had in mind to go ahead and consume the carbon or do something for the carbon chutz lizmanon, outside of the prescribed time, which is another way of saying that what? When I did the zrika, I had machshavas pigul. So a lot of stuff happening over here. The loaves are being taken out after the shechita, before the zrika. The zrika is being done with some type of an invalidating machshava, i.e. machshavas pigul. So we'll say, so what's the shaila? So the shaila is ultimately, again, what's the status of the loaves? So watch this. Rabbi Elazar Omer, ein belechem mishum pigul. Rabbi Elazar says, the bread, the loaves themselves, are not subject to pigul. They're not subject to pigul. Now both saying, now why are they not subject? Well, actually we'll see. Rabbi Akiva Omer, yesh b'lechem mishum pigul. Rabbi Akiva says, yes, they are subject to pigul. Now both saying, now understand, what's novel about this case over here? What's novel about this case is the bread was already taken outside of the Beis HaMikdash. So the shaila is, do we say that once the bread was nifsal biyotze, then what? Then essentially pigul has no longer any kind of impact on it, or do we say no? Even if it was nifsal biyotze, it could still become pigul, or do we say, there's a third possibility, which is what they're both saying, it doesn't become nifsal biyotze before what? Before zrika. Because remember, you know, both say, there's a lot of stuff happening over here. Because remember, the bread is being taken out before zrika. After shchita, before zrika. So the shaila now is, so I did the shchita of the kvasim, I took out the bread. I then had machshavas pigul by the zrika of the blood for the kifsei atzeres. So now the shaila is, what's the impact of the machshavas pigul of the zrika on the loaves which were taken outside after the shchita, before the zrika? Okay? Like I said, a lot of stuff happening over here. So I'll say, so Rabbi Akiva says, the bread becomes pigul. Rabbi Eliezer says, the bread does not become pigul. So I'll say, Sa'amar Rav Sheshes, Hani Tanoi Kerebi Siyurlu. These Tanoim hold like Rebbe, who says, Daminon Shchita Mekadsha. So we'll say, so they must hold like Rebbe, who holds that Shchita ultimately, again, is what consecrates the Kivsei Atzeres. And therefore, again, so the Gemara says, Mihu Rabbi Eliezer Letamei. So we'll say, so now watch this. If you hold like Rebbe, who holds that Shchita is what affects the Kedusha of the Kivsei of the Shtei Alechem, not the Zrika, so then Rabbi said, then Bepashtos, it could very well be that what? That even though the loaves were taken outside, they may still become pigul. What's happening over here? So watch this. Miu Rabbi Eliezer Letamei Da'amar Ein Zrika Mo Elas Liotze. Rabbi Eliezer is of the opinion of Osai that once the loaves are taken outside, that's it, they're nifsal biyotze, and therefore the zrika has absolutely no impact on them. In other words, even though the zrika had a machshavas pigul attached to it, it doesn't make any difference. Rabbi Akiva Letamei Da'amar Zrika Mo Elas Liotze. Rabbi Akiva is of the opinion that even if an item was nifsal biyotze, a machshavas pigul by the zrika can still go ahead and add on an additional dimension of disqualification. We'll say Mem Zainam days. This nan, because we learned Emure Kachin Kalim Shiyat Lifnei Zrikas Damim. If you have limbs of Kadshe Kalim, right, that ultimately again were taken out before Zrika. So we'll say Shchita was done, and then what happens? The Emurim, the limbs of the Kachim Kalim were taken out, and it was taken out before Zrika. So we'll say, so the shaila is now, what's the status? Rabbi Eliezer Omer, Ein Mo'alin Bahen. So we'll say, Rabbi Eliezer says, they are no longer subject to Me'ilah. Furthermore, again, Ve'ein Chayavan Alehen, Mishum Pigul, V'nosar V'tameh. And one will not be chayiv because of Pigul, Nosar, and Tameh. Rabbi Akiva says, no, Mo'alin Bahen. They are in fact subject to Me'ilah. V'chayavan Alehen, Mishum Pigul, V'nosar, V'tameh. And ultimately, again, they will be subject to the prohibitions of pigul, nosar, and tameh. To which the Gemara says, "Mai." So we'll say, so now what do we do with this? Rashi says, "Mai kilomar libud Rabbi Akiva miboile." So we'll say, what do I do with this previous discussion? Midizrikas pigul kava lelechem. Now watch this. Okay, so that's down. It's Mai midizrikas pigul. The factor will say that if I do a zrika with the machshavas pigul, kava lelechem bepigul. Biyotze kibasar, apparently it has the ability to go ahead and convey a pigul status to bread, to the loaves, even though what? Even though the loaves were already nifsal biyotze. So apparently what we're saying over here is as follows. Remember, what's our case? The case is I did the shchita on the shtei I did the shchita on the kivsei atzeres. Okay, let's probably, this control is very important. I did the shchita on the kivsei atzeres. What happened next? Loaves are taken out. What happens next? Right? Zrika is done with what machshava's pigul. So we'll say, so now the shaila is, what's the status of the loaves? Are the loaves asr because of pigul as well, or not? So we'll say, so the fundamental so now the Gemara seems to be saying, It seems to be that we're saying now that the loaves will be subject to pigul the same way the basar, the meat of the carbon, is subject to pigul. Let me read that again. So the Gemara says, midizrikas pigul kava lelechem bepigul biyotze. The fact that a zrika of pigul, Rabosai, goes ahead and takes the bread and makes it pigul, even though the bread was already pasal because of yotze, the bread becomes like the basar. Just like the basar is now going to be asar because of machshavas pigul, so too the bread will also be endowed with an additional dimension of prohibition because of machshavas pigul. Shelo lishma nami sharia le'lechem. Do we see Rabbi say that if the zrika was done shelo lishma, zrika shelo lishma, will that also permit the lechem? O dilma l'chumra aminan l'kula lo aminan. Or perhaps Rabbi say we only say this comparison when it yields ultimately a chumrah, but not when it yields a kula. Look at Rashi just a moment. O dilma l'chumra aminan l'kula lios lechem ne'acha lo aminan. We'll say perhaps we'll only make the comparison to prohibit something, but will not make the comparison ultimately again to permit lechem. So I'll compare lechem to basar when that yields an additional level of prohibition, as it does in this case. But if the comparison would ultimately permit the lechem, then I'm not going to do. Maskif l'Rapapa, so Rapapa says, Umi mai dichi isninu avrai pligi. How do you know that we're talking about it? How do you know that the machlokis is only in a case where the bread is outside? Dilma b'diasinu avroi dicholi amalo pligi de'ein zrika mo'elas liyotze. Habosai, listen to this. Maybe everyone agrees that if the lechem is outside of the Beis HaMikdash, if the lechem was so again, shchita was done l'shma. Ultimately, again, loaves are taken outside. Zrika is done with a machshavas pigul. Maybe in that case, what everyone will agree that halacha lemaisa, the loaves do not become pigul. Why? Because they're already nifsal biyotze. So the Gemara says maybe dichuli amalo pligi de zrika mo'elas liyotze. Ubahadar ailinhu pligi. Or we'll say, watch this. Maybe the machlokes is even in a more riveting case, where what? The loaves are brought back inside. So we'll say, maybe we could say that if the loaves are taken out and they're left out, then what? Then what? Are the loaves puzzle? Are the loaves puzzle? Yes, but why? Why? Because of yotze. But do they become pigul? Maybe not. Maybe not. As both say, once you're outside of the Beis HaMikdash, you're out. In other words, you're out. You're going to go ahead and be puzzle. But lamaisa, again, your psul will be limited to the psul of yotze, and you can't become puzzle alts pigul. In other words, both say, once you're out, you're out. But maybe watch this. Maybe the machlokes is in the case of bahadra ailinhu. Let's say maybe the machlokes case is as follows, and this is where it gets more even. You thought it couldn't get more interesting. Yes, it can, because watch this. Maybe the case is like this, where it was shechted lishma. Follow this sequential order. It was shechted lishma. Then what? Loaves were taken out. Then zrika was done. Shalol lishman. Loaves are brought back in. We'll say ultimately again, what's the status of the loaves once they're brought back in? Rabbi Eliezer savar like Rabbi Damar Shchita Mekadsha Vivsul Biyotze. Rabbi Eliezer holds like Rabbi Rabosai, and Rabbi is of the opinion that what the status of the carbon is solidified at the zman of Shchita. Remember again, what's Rabbi's drasha? What's Rabbi's drasha from Amud Aleph? Yasa Zevach. Yasa Zevach. Everything is about the Zvicha. Therefore, Vivsul Biyotze. And therefore, once the loaves are taken out, Rabosai, when? I messed up the sequential order. Once the loaves are taken out after shchita, then what, Rabosai? Then what? Then what? We're done. We're done. The loaves are puzzle al tziosi, nothing else to talk about. Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Shimon, Damar Shchita lo mekadsha. Watch this. Maybe Rabbi Akiva holds like Rabbi who holds that no. We'll say what solidifies the carbonic identity of any particular carbon? Zrika. And therefore, watch this. So we'll say, therefore, watch this. Shchita lo mekadsha. Oh, Rabbi say this is so exciting. So say according to Rabbi Elazar, this is according to Rabbi Akiva, you can hold like this. Watch this. See, Rabbi say if you hold that it's not zrika, it's not shchita that solidifies the carbonic identity, but rather it's what? It's zrika. Then watch this case. I shechted the carbon. This kif se'at zeres. I shechted the carbon l'shma. What's next? What did I do next? I took the loaves outside. Now watch what happens. I bring the loaves back in. Now I do zrika. But again, I mess up the zrika because what do I have in mind when I do the zrika? Machshavas pigol. Oh, I will say. So ultimately, again, says Rabbi Akiva, according to Rabbi Shimon, who says that it is what? That it is the zrika that solidifies carbonic identity. What's the status now, ultimately, of the loaves? They could become pigol. Why could they become pigol, Rabosai? Because we don't really care that they were taken out after shchita. Because what solidifies, what concretizes carbonic identity? Zrika. So both say, so this is actually quite exciting. So it could be the Gemara says that the real test case over here is when loaves were taken out after shchita, but what? Brought back in before zrika. So as I said, so again, I just want to point out, we're making things complicated, but in fact, the machlokes is quite a simple one. What's the fundamental machlokes, Rabosai? It's the machlokes we had in Amud Aleph, which is what? What solidifies or what concretizes carbonic identity? Is it shchita or is it zrika? This is just another variation of that machlokes. So Rabosai, in this case, it's just more interesting because here, the shchita was kasher, the zrika was pasal, the zrika was pasal als pigol. The shaila is now, does the pigol identity devolve upon the loaves? But the loaves were already taken back out and they were brought back in. Are the loaves pasal with yotze? If they're pasal with yotze, can they become pasal with pigol? And the answer, of course, is it depends, right? It depends. And what does it depend on, Rabbi? It depends what you hold solidifies or concretizes carbonic identity. If you hold that shchita solidifies and concretizes carbonic identity, then once you took those loaves out after shchita, even though you brought them back in before zrika, the loaves cannot become pigol. Why can't the loaves become pigol, Rabbi? Because they're already nifsal biyotze. They're done, they're out. If, however, you hold that it's zrika that solidifies and concretizes carbonic identity, so then what, Rabbi? The fact that they're brought out after shchita, as long as they're brought back in before zrika, we don't even view them as if they were ever taken out. And therefore, subsequently, when you do zrika with the machshavas pigol, guess what? What's the status of the loaves? Pigol. Beautiful. I mean, not beautiful. Pigol's bad, but you understand what I mean. Of course, says the Gemara. So the Gemara says, Hi mais. Okay, so now what do we do with this? So if you hold that what? Mamish is like possessed. Right? So if you hold, right, so I say, if you hold that Rabbi Akiva holds like Rabbi, Damer Shchita Mekatsha, who holds that ultimately what? Shchita goes ahead and solidifies and concretizes carbonic identity. Hainu dekam Rabbi Akiva dekachle b'shchita. That's what Rabbi Akiva would hold, that the carbon becomes kadosh ultimately again with shchita. The carbon becomes kadosh ultimately again with shchita. Kachle b'shchita va'asya zrika kave la bepigol. And I will say what happens. So therefore, if you hold that Rabbi Akiva holds like Rabbi, who holds that shchita solidifies carbonic identity, that's what Rabbi Akiva holds, that the carbon becomes kadosh shchita, and therefore the zrika has the ability ultimately to make it pigol. Ella I amrit, because again, remember, the bread was already solid, or the bread was already kadosh after the shchita. But if you hold that he holds like Rabbi Shimon, the Amar Zvicha lo mekadsha, who holds that ultimately what? Zvicha is not mekadesh the carbon, meaning it's not just the shchita, but rather it's the zvika. Then zrika is pigol mi mekadsha. Then ultimately again, does a zrika that is pigol also have the ability to be mekadesh the loaves? V'amarav gidol amarav zrikas pigol eina mavia lidei meila. So ultimately again, Rav Gil is the name of Rabbi saying that a zrika of pigol, which means a zrika done with a machshavas pigol, eina mavia lidei meila, does not have the ability ultimately again to bring a carbon to the point where it be subject to the laws of meila. Ve'eina motzia midei meila, and furthermore again it will not exempt it, or it cannot take it out of the parsha of meila. Eina mavia lidei meila be'ein murikachim. So what does it mean when we say that I cannot bring it to meila liability? That's talking about the limbs of the carbon, or beimore kachim kalim. And both I can't go ahead and remove it from the parsha of Me'ilah. What is that talking about? Bebasar kadshe kadoshim. Ultimately, again, with that's talking about the meat of the kadshe kadoshim, which the Gemara says in 1 second. Lav isosiv d'Rav Gidl. Did we not already answer this and refute this beforehand with the answer of Rav Gidl? Fine, so therefore the Gemara ends off not really resolving this particular question, but understand that the machlokes itself, it's still a very real one, which is at what point in time do we say carbonic identity is solidified? Do we say that it's at the time of shchita? Do we say that it's the time of zrika? Very simple machlokes. That's based on what I will say. That's based on the drasha of the pasuk. Do we darshan the word yeaseh, or do we darshan the word zevach? What we begin to see is what? Is that halacha lemaisa. I think you're just making it angrier. It just seems to be right. So ultimately, again, so we see over here that the fundamental machlokes is at what point in time carbonic identity is solidified, and we begin to see the further nafkaminas within those particular respective shitos. Good. Weiter says the Gemara. Ba'minei Rabbi Yirmiyah me Rabbi Seira. Kivsi atzeres. We'll say so. We'll start with kivsi atzeres. Kivsi atzeres sheshachtan lishman. We'll say watch this case. Let's say kivsi atzeres that were shechted lishman. They were shechted lishman. Va'avad halechem, and the loaves get lost. Meaning you lose the loaves. Mau sheyizrok daman shelo lishman lahatir basra ba'achila. So we'll say now watch this. Here now you have an incredibly it's fine. We'll say this is a fascinating shayla. So listen to this case. Kivsi atzeres, and I lose the loaves. So the shchita was fine. But the lishman, the loaves go. So we'll say. So remember again. What did we already learn? If there's one thing you know about kivsi atzeres, about the shua suffering, we'll say what is it? That there's a fundamental interdependence between the loaves and the animal offering. The animal offerings are invalid without the loaves. The loaves are invalid without the animal offerings. So we'll say now, in this case, what's ended up happening over here is as follows. At the time of the shechita, everything was fine. At the time of the shechita, the loaves were there, the animals were there, shalom Yisrael, everything was perfect. After shechita, the loaves are lost. So is it valid as a shavuos offering? Is it valid as a shavuos offering? No. It's not valid as a shavuos offering because remember again, you need both. Everyone agrees that you need both parts through the entire carbonic process. Here, my loaves are lost. But watch this chap the Gemara has. I have an eitzah. What's the eitzah? Ma'u sheyizrok daman shelo lishman lahatir basar ba'achila. I have a great chap. What's the chap? I'll do the zrika shelo lishma. I'll do the zrika shelo lishma. I will say in this case means I'm not going to do the zrika l'shem kivsei atzeres. So what am I going to do the zrika l'shem what? Look at Rashi. I will say it's Rashi. 3 lines out from before the lines get wide, the widest ones. Ma'u sheyizrok daman shelo lishma ela l'shem shlamim lahatir basar ba'achila. We'll say I'll do the zrika. This is very exciting. I'll do the zrika. Not l'shem kivsei atzeres. Instead, I'll do it l'shem what? L'shem shlamim. Now, both say, now, what does that do? What does that do if I do it l'shem shlamim? It could potentially permit the meat for consumption. So we'll say, see what's happening over here? See what's happening over here? We'll say, so this is amazing. So now, follow the case. It's shavuos. I'm doing the offering. The offering has 2 parts: kivsei atzeres and shtei halechem. When at the time of the shechita, everything was there, and all was fine. I lose the loaves. Now what happens, Abosai? So what do I want to do? I want to go ahead and now do the zrika shelo lishman, and l'shem shlamim, in order that the basar, the meat itself, becomes permitted for consumption. So does that work or not? Shabbos says this is going to be a case of what? This is going to be a case of intentional shchita lishman and zrika shelo lishman, because that's my only recourse. I can't do zrika lishman. Why? The loaves are missing, and therefore again there's no such thing as zrika lishman anymore. That's done. Can I do a zrika shelo lishman and ultimately permit the meat b'toras shlamim? So says the Gemara. Says the Gemara, so Bamine Rabbi Yamim Zera Kivsei Atzeres Sheshachtan Lishman Va'avad Halechem Mao Shizrak Damash Shel Lishman. So again, the shechita was on the shape Kivsei Atzeres. The loaves were lost. So now my only eitzah is I'm going to do a Zrika Shalom Lishman and permit the meat L'Shem Shlamim. So the Gemara says, does that work? Mao Shizrak Damash Shel Lishman Lahat Yir Basar B'Achila. Amalei said to him, that doesn't make any sense. Yesh L'cha Davar She'no Kasha L'Shmo. The kasher shalom lishmo. So essentially what you're telling me is as follows. If you go ahead and you do the zrika for this carbon lishma, then what's Rabosai? The carbon will be invalid. Is there such a thing as a carbon that if you shecht it lishma, it'll be invalid, but if you shecht it shalom lishma, it'll be valid? Rabosai, it's counterintuitive. It's counterintuitive. So the Gemara essentially seems to be saying over here, once a carbon can't be shechted lishma, then what? By definition, it can't be shechted shalom lishma. Is it possible to say that shalom lishma will permit the carbon? To which the Gemara says, actually, I'll show you a case. So the Gemara says, "V'lo v'hari pesach kodim chatzos." We'll say, what about a carbon pesach before chatzos? Before chatzos on erev pesach. Remember again, the carbon pesach can only be shechted after chatzos. So what about a carbon pesach before chatzos? We'll say, what is that? A carbon pesach before chatzos? De'eno kasher lishmo, the kasher shelo lishmo. Both say if you shechted Karban Pesach before Chatzos and you shechted l'shem Karban Pesach, then what? What's the status? It's pasul. But if you shechted shelo lishmo before Chatzos, it's kasher. Because they both say a Pesach shelo lishmo before Chatzos is what? A shlamim. So both say, so you do see that there's a case of a carbon that if shechted lishmo will be pasul, shelo lishmo will be kasher. So that should work over here in the case of the kivsei atzeres, to which the Gemara says, no. Hachi kamina lecha. This is what I mean. Davar hachi kamina. Yesh lecha davar shenira lishmo v'nitche milishmo ve'ino kasher lishmo v'kasher shlosha. What the Gemara says, what I mean to say is as follows. Do you ever have a carbon abosai that at some point in time was fit lishmo, then becomes unfit lishmo, and therefore again if offered up lishmo will be aser, but if what? Now you can offer it up shalo lishmo, or as both saying, what the Gemara is suggesting over here is the case that we're bringing down is not comparable to the case of Karban Pesach. Because you will say, what happened over here by the kivsei atzeres? What happened over here? What happened here? You shechted it lishma. And at the time they have the shechita, what was the status of the carbon? At the time of the shechita, it was kasher. It was totally good. So therefore, I will say the shechita was totally fine. So therefore, I will say the case of the Pesach is not comparable because the case of the Pesach, although you designated it as a Pesach, there was no shechita l'shem Pesach. I will say nope. The Pesach process did not begin to unfold. So okay, I understand. You had an animal designated as a Pesach. But I will say, in this case over here, you shechted it l'shem kivsei atzeres. And at the time of the shechita, I will say, what was the status of the carbon? At the time of the shechita, it was good. So now I will say, you lose the loaves. So now, again, you can't shecht it l'shma. So is there such a thing as a carbon that was shechted l'shma, that was fit l'shma, and now you can't do the zrika l'shma, but you could do the zrika sholosh on the carbon will be kasher? To which the Gemara says, v'lo, is there not a case? I'll show you another example. Varei Pesach achar zmano b'shayimos hashana. But say, listen to this. What about a Karban Pesach after Pesach? After Pesach achar zmano, to which the Gemara says, which Rabbi say the halacha is it was niter for Pesach, meaning on erev Pesach you could have used it as a Pesach. Now that window closed. If you shecht it lishmo, then what? It'll be pasul. But if you do it shalo lishmo, ultimately again it will be permitted. So in other words, the Gemara is saying that's a case where the animal was permitted ultimately again in a certain way. Now that window closed, you can't shecht it for the intended purpose, but you could shecht it for shalo lishmo and it's kasher. To which the Gemara says, this is what I mean to say. Yesh lecha davar shenira lishmo v'nishchat lishmo v'nitche milishmo ve'eno kasher lishmo ve'kasher shelo lishmo. To which the Gemara says it's still not a good comparison. Why did I both say? Because remember, in this case of kivsei atzeres, remember again, I both say it's not just the pshat that the karbanos were fit for Yom Tov offering. Rabbi say, but what actually happened? What happened? They were slaughtered. They were shechted. So do you ever have a case of a karban that was shechted for its intended purpose? And at the time of the shechita, it was what? It was kosher. And now you're going to tell me that what? I can no longer do the zrika lishmo, but if you do the zrika shalo lishmo, it will be permitted. It's totally counterintuitive. To which the Gemara says, I'll give you an example. Vahari toda. Rabbi said, what about the karban toda? What about the karban toda? Rabbi said, you can't do it like this. To which the Gemara says, shiny toda, dirachmana karyi shlamim. Ultimately, again, the karban toda is different. Rabbi say, why? Because the Torah calls the karban toda ultimately a shlamim. And because the Torah calls the shlamim, look at Rashi just a moment. Toda rachmana karyi shlamim, second to last line in Rashi. Todas shlamav kidamin aleel, ma shlamim karvi below lechem, af toda karva below lechem. Ume olam lo nitcha shlosham. We'll say even though a karban toda ultimately comes with accompanying loaves, because the toda is called a shlamim, therefore even if the loaves are lost, it still has the ability to be offered up. So we'll say the Gemara will stop over here for today, but the Gemara does not resolve the question. The question itself, so I'm leaving you a little about the cliffhanger, which the Gemara will try to resolve tomorrow, which is about say this very specific case of where what? I shechted the kiftzei atzeres lishmo. Everything is going great. A technical issue came up, which is what? After shchita, the lechem is lost. Now I have an eitzah. What's the eitzah? Do the zrika shalo lishma. If you do the zrika shalo lishma, say shalo lishma means what? Do it l'shem what? L'shem shlamim. Don't do it l'shem kiftzei atzeres. Do it l'shem shlamim, and therefore at least permit the meat for consumption. To which I say the Gemara is left with like a mind-blowing quandary. So what you're telling me is I have a situation of a karban where if I do the zrika lishmo or lishma, ultimately again the karban will be pasul, because if I do the zrika l'shem kiftzei atzeres, the karban is pasul. Why? Because the loaves are missing. But yet if I do it shalo lishma, ultimately again it will be kosher. So we'll say the Gemara has difficulty wrapping its head around that, tries to bring other examples, but effectively shows that the other examples are not really comparable to the case of kiftzei atzeres.